3 decades ago, the U.S. Army developed the air-land battle concept, which emphasized securing or retaining the initiative and exercising it aggressively to accomplish the mission. Operations would throw the enemy off balance with a powerful blow from an unexpected direction, follow up rapidly to prevent his recovery, and continue operations aggressively to achieve the higher commander's goals. Air-land battle, with its emphasis on initiative, agility, depth, and synchronization, enabled military superiority in subsequent decades. Despite its success, air-land battle doctrine had its limitations. It focused on only 2 domains and predictable patterns of enemy and friendly operations. Today's adversaries have studied air-land battle and adapted to develop capabilities that can test joint force operations on land, at sea, in air, space, and the cyber electromagnetic domains. Future Army forces will be prepared to fight and win consistent with the concept of multi-domain battle. Operations that create temporary windows of superiority across multiple domains that enable joint force freedom of action in order to seize, retain, and exploit the initiative. Future enemies will implement aggressive anti-access and area denial, or A2AD, strategies to challenge U.S. air and sea dominance and contest U.S. access to space, cyberspace, and the ability to use the electromagnetic spectrum. Adversaries preparing for combat operations against the U.S. have developed a broad range of cross-domain capabilities. They will attempt to control airspace from the ground, establishing integrated air defense networks to prevent effective close air support, air reconnaissance, and air mobility. They will make extensive use of unmanned aerial systems for reconnaissance, targeting, and attack of high-value targets. Their fixed and rotary wing aviation will support ground forces. Their long-range strike capability will threaten both land and sea forces while also targeting logistics bases and lines of communication. Future enemies will seek to control maritime approaches to the joint operational area using surface and subsurface naval forces, minefields, and land-based anti-ship missiles. Naval assets will augment air defense and provide ship-to-shore fires in support of ground maneuver. In the cyber domain, they will attack commercial and military data and information flow, disrupting or confusing communications, intelligence, and surveillance capabilities. Sophisticated enemies will use space-based systems to provide situational understanding and targeting data for ground and air forces, while disrupting U.S. space support with electronic warfare assets and anti-satellite weapons. Modernized enemy ground forces will seek advantages in lethality, protection, and mobility, as well as indirect fire capabilities to outrange and outgun U.S. forces. Future enemies will integrate these cross-domain capabilities to establish an effective multi-domain defense, challenging the joint force in all domains. To defeat future enemies that possess advanced capabilities, multi-domain battle calls for land forces operating as a part of integrated joint teams to conduct simultaneous and sequential operations across multiple domains. When possible, land forces move uncontested into positions of advantage in allied or partner nations prior to the outbreak of hostilities. Rotational or forward-deployed combined arms land formations present potential enemies with multiple dilemmas and preserve response options for our nation's leaders. Land forces with cross-domain fires capabilities, such as cyber electromagnetic warfare capabilities, integrated air defense, and long-range precision fires turn areas which enemies would like to deny access into contested spaces. At the same time, land forces with ground maneuver and close combat overmatch capabilities complement and strengthen partner land forces, preventing the enemy from quickly seizing key terrain and forcing the enemy to concentrate. Together, land-based maneuver and fires capabilities form a powerful deterrent because they are able to deny an aggressive enemy the ability to accomplish his objectives. To execute multi-domain operations, U.S. forces must achieve and maintain situational understanding of both enemy and friendly capabilities. Joint Force commanders rely on land forces to develop understanding by integrating intelligence and operations in close contact with enemy and populations. These actions are ongoing and can occur over a period of hours, days, weeks, or months. To gain situational understanding, Special Operation Forces, or SOF teams, use networks developed through sustained engagement to gather intelligence, mature situational understanding, and disrupt enemy operations in depth. Army reconnaissance and security formations conduct reconnaissance in all domains and protect assets that are critical to reinforcing defenses or striking enemies in depth. Land forces partner with police and internal security forces to share intelligence and to disrupt enemy soft teams and collection assets operating in the friendly security zone. Friendly forces conduct deception operations to deny the enemy situational understanding. Combined arms maneuver forces protect cross-domain fires formations and preserve the Joint Force Commander's ability to introduce additional forces. Effective reconnaissance and security operations enable, across domains, the Joint Force Commander to identify enemy critical and vulnerable assets while denying the same information to the enemy. The Joint Force Commander determines the enemy's ability to use surface-to-air missiles, or SAMs, that restrict friendly reconnaissance, strike, and strategic air mobility, along with his ability to strike friendly forces with surface-to-surface missiles, or SSMs, are his most dangerous capabilities. Reconnaissance and analysis of enemy operations reveals that the enemy is potentially most vulnerable through a seam in the cyberspace domain that could be exploited briefly to degrade a portion of his air defense network. However, key terrain in the land domain is most critical to the enemy because of the partner nation city he occupies, the enemy lines of communication, and the areas where his surface-to-surface missile and air defense batteries must operate. The Joint Force Commander is now ready to plan a series of battles to stack friendly capabilities both sequentially and simultaneously to dislocate the enemy, seize the initiative, and exploit the initiative by subsequent maneuvers to place his forces in positions of relative advantage. The attack begins with a pre-planned cyber-electromagnetic attack on the enemy to temporarily degrade his network. Near simultaneously, artillery units attack a low-altitude air defense unit to create a gap in the enemy's air defense network. Airstrikes exploit this gap and attack air defense and SSM units to prolong the duration of this window. Army airborne and air assault brigades employing future vertical lift seize key terrain to block approaches to a potential U.S. Marine Corps landing site and threaten enemy lines of communication and air defense sites. With the enemy's surface-to-surface missile batteries and their sensors destroyed or suppressed, a Marine Expeditionary Unit initiates movement while an Army armored brigade envelops and destroys the enemy in defensive positions. Because the enemy will detect and attempt to close the windows that friendly forces open, land-based fires preserve opportunities for joint force maneuver, attacking enemy sensors, aircraft, and artillery batteries through a combination of kinetic and non-kinetic cross-domain fires. An important assumption of multi-domain battle is that the competition for domain superiority will be continuous. In this case, enemy countermeasures result in most of the enemy's air defense and rocket artillery networks being re-established within hours of the initial strike. However, U.S. forces can bypass some of the enemy's counteractions by employing mission orders and launching communications balloons to establish temporary communications networks over critical areas. Simultaneously, other formations with organic, direct, and indirect fires attack enemy units, impeding their maneuver. A naval surface task force attacks enemy surface-to-surface missiles, search radars, and suppresses enemy fires with Army land-based cross-domain fires. Finally, the airborne and air assault brigades, possessing the organic protection, mobility, and lethality across all domains to endure the effects of enemy counterattacks, continue to threaten the enemy rear area. However, the enemy also takes offensive actions to attack joint force assets. To counter these expected actions from a capable and determined enemy, the joint force requires integrated and resilient rather than interdependent and fragile systems that can be rendered ineffective by a successful enemy attack on a key unit, location, or system. For example, although a reconstituted enemy air defense network was re-established, joint force freedom of maneuver no longer depends on defeating this network because place land forces which maneuvered into positions of advantage enable freedom of maneuver. While enemy maneuver forces threaten friendly units, hold key terrain, and protect surface-to-surface missile firing batteries, the dislocating effects of the joint force's initial maneuver placed many of these forces out of position. Simultaneous, dispersed, independent actions by the Marine Expeditionary Unit and Army brigades in the north, along with the Mechanized Brigade in the south, retained the initiative against the enemy and opened durable windows of domain superiority from the land. These actions enable freedom of action for Marine Corps, Air Force, and Navy strike aircraft. In the south, the Armored Brigade penetrates an identified weak point in the enemy's defenses and links up with partner nation partisans. Organic reconnaissance and cross-domain fires capabilities allowed these units to detect and attack targets in all domains at extended ranges. Decentralized combined arms capabilities allow small units to overmatch a disoriented enemy in close combat. The Joint Forces execution of multi-domain battle rapidly gained the initiative and enabled maneuver forces to gain not only physical advantages, but also psychological advantages associated with surprise and speed of action. Land forces possess the resilience, persistence, and sustainability to continue the action against the enemy and consolidate gains in liberated areas. Operating across multiple domains is not a new role for the U.S. Army, Marine Corps, or Special Operating Forces. What is new is the lethality of the battlefield and the conclusion that all domains are contested. These conditions require ready land forces capable of operating in sufficient scale and ample duration to defeat enemies, secure terrain, and project power outward from land to ensure joint force freedom of action. Enabling Army forces in the conduct of multi-domain battle requires advanced capabilities to provide soldiers and units with improved lethality, mobility, and protection. The foundation of the Army's strength has always been and will remain soldiers and teams that possess the capabilities and confidence to overmatch the enemy and win in land combat. Future soldiers empowered with the capabilities to conduct multi-domain battle will provide our nation's leadership with multiple options to deter conflict, protect the nation, and win wars.